In the deepest monasteries of Tibet, there exists a teaching so radical, so counterintuitive, that most spiritual seekers who encounter it flee back to their comfortable illusions about compassion and kindness. It's the teaching of the rejection master, a holy being so evolved in understanding that when someone comes begging for pardon, for absolution, for spiritual forgiveness, he looks them directly in the eyes and says one word: no. Not out of cruelty, not out of judgment, but out of a love so pure, so transcendent, that it refuses to participate in the very mechanism that keeps souls trapped in cycles of spiritual infancy. Here's what will shatter everything you believe about mercy and enlightenment. The Holy Master understands that pardon is the enemy of liberation. When seekers first encounter a true Holy Master, they arrive carrying their spiritual resumes, their confessions, their catalog of mistakes, and their desperate need for someone wise to tell them they're forgiven. They want absolution like a drug, a spiritual morphine that will numb the sacred discomfort of their unresolved karma and allow them to continue sleepwalking through existence. But the Holy Master sees through this immediately. He recognizes that beneath every request for pardon lies the deepest spiritual laziness, the desire to be relieved of consequences without undergoing transformation. So he does something that appears heartless but is actually the purest expression of divine love. He refuses to enable their spiritual addiction. If you're feeling disturbed by this concept right now, comment addiction below. Your discomfort might be pointing to something profound about your own relationship with accountability. This practice emerges from an ancient recognition that most modern spiritual teachers completely miss. True compassion sometimes requires apparent cruelty. Real love sometimes demands withholding what someone desperately wants. The Holy Master has transcended the human need to be liked, to be seen as kind, to provide comfort. He operates from a dimension of awareness where the soul's evolution matters more than the personality's comfort. When someone confesses their failures to him, seeking the relief of pardon, he doesn't offer platitudes about divine forgiveness or universal love. Instead, he does something far more radical. He hands their karma back to them intact and undiminished and says, "This belongs to you. Honor it by living it fully." But here's where this teaching becomes truly mystical. The Holy Master understands something about the nature of spiritual development that conventional religion has forgotten. Karma isn't punishment. It's curriculum. Every consequence, every difficult situation, every uncomfortable result of past actions is precisely calibrated spiritual education. To pardon someone is to rob them of their spiritual education. It's like doing someone's homework for them and then wondering why they never learn anything. The seeker who receives this rejection initially experiences it as devastating. They came seeking relief and instead found someone who insists they carry their full spiritual weight. But those who don't flee discover something extraordinary. In being forced to fully experience their karma without the numbing effect of pardon, they develop spiritual muscles they never knew they possessed. They learn to metabolize consequences directly, to extract wisdom from discomfort, to find growth in places where they previously sought only escape. Follow me if you want to understand how this apparent rejection actually creates the conditions for authentic spiritual liberation. The Holy Master's refusal to grant pardon operates on multiple levels simultaneously, each one designed to serve the seeker's highest evolution. On the surface level, it forces accountability. When you can't get spiritual authority figures to absolve your actions, you must develop internal mechanisms for processing consequences. You can't externalize responsibility for your choices or their results. On the psychological level, it prevents spiritual bypassing, the tendency to use spiritual concepts and practices to avoid dealing with unresolved emotional and psychological material. Without the escape route of pardon, the seeker must actually face what they've created rather than spiritualizing it away. Comment bypassing if you recognize how seeking spiritual pardon can become a way of avoiding real inner work. On the energetic level, it maintains the integrity of cosmic law. Every action creates energy that seeks completion through appropriate consequences. When these consequences are pardoned away, the energy becomes stuck, creating spiritual stagnation. But it's on the deepest level that the Holy Master's rejection becomes truly transformative. On the consciousness level, it forces the seeker to discover something revolutionary. They are not separate from their karma. They are not a victim of their consequences. They are the author of their experience and therefore the only one qualified to transform it. This recognition destroys the illusion of spiritual helplessness that keeps so many seekers dependent on external authorities for validation, absolution, and guidance. The Holy Master watches this process with the detached compassion of a surgeon. He knows that what looks like suffering is actually healing. What appears as rejection is actually the deepest form of spiritual midwifery. He's not abandoning the seeker. He's creating the precise conditions necessary for their spiritual birth. And here's what's beautiful about this process. The seeker who initially felt rejected eventually experiences the most profound form of spiritual liberation. They discover they don't need anyone else's permission to be free. They don't need external authority to validate their spiritual progress. They become spiritually self-generating, self-sustaining, independent of the need for pardon because they've learned to work directly with the raw material of their existence. This is what the Holy Master has been pointing toward all along, not the comfort of being pardoned, but the power of being sovereign. But here's where this teaching reveals its most shocking dimension. The Holy Master's rejection of pardoning isn't limited to individual seekers. He extends this principle to entire spiritual communities, traditions, and even civilizations. When groups come to him seeking absolution for collective sins, cultural mistakes, or historical traumas, he applies the same principle. He refuses to provide the spiritual bypass that would allow them to avoid the transformative work of actually processing their collective karma. This creates enormous controversy. Religious leaders who offer easy forgiveness become far more popular than those who insist on genuine transformation. Political movements that promise absolution gain more followers than those that demand accountability. But the Holy Master is not concerned with popularity. He's concerned with evolution. And evolution requires metabolizing experience, not avoiding it. Right, collective, if you can see how this principle applies to larger social and cultural dynamics beyond individual spiritual seeking. The communities that accept the Holy Master's rejection of pardon undergo something remarkable. They develop collective spiritual maturity. They learn to process difficult truths without fragmenting. They evolve beyond the need for comfortable lies. They become resilient in ways that communities dependent on external absolution never achieve. This is why the Holy Master's teachings are considered so dangerous by conventional spiritual authorities. They threaten the entire industry built around providing spiritual comfort rather than facilitating spiritual growth. If seekers became truly independent, truly sovereign, truly capable of working with their own karma directly, what would happen to all the systems designed to keep them spiritually dependent? The Holy Master's approach reveals how much of organized spirituality is actually organized spiritual codependency, disguised as compassion. Follow for more content that exposes these hidden dynamics of spiritual evolution and the courage required for authentic transformation. But here's where the Holy Master's teaching becomes practical for anyone serious about genuine spiritual development. You don't need to find a Holy Master to benefit from this principle. You can begin applying it to yourself immediately. Notice when you seek external validation for your spiritual progress. Notice when you want someone else to tell you you're forgiven, you're good enough, you're on the right path. Instead of seeking this external confirmation, turn toward your actual experience. What are the consequences of your choices teaching you? What is your karma trying to show you about yourself? What growth is available in the discomfort you're trying to escape through spiritual pardon? This self-application of the Holy Master's principle begins developing the same spiritual sovereignty he's pointing toward. You become your own source of validation, your own processor of consequences, your own guide through the territory of transformation. Comment sovereign if you feel ready to stop seeking external spiritual validation and start working directly with your own experience. The Holy Master eventually reveals something that completes the teaching in a way that transforms apparent cruelty into obvious love. He shows that rejection of pardon is actually the deepest form of recognition possible. When he refuses to absolve someone, he's saying, I see your divine capacity to handle this. I recognize your spiritual strength. I honor your ability to transform this experience into wisdom. Pardon says, you're too weak to handle your karma, so I'll take it away. Rejection of pardon says, you're powerful enough to alchemize this experience into gold. One treats the seeker as spiritually helpless. The other recognizes them as spiritually capable. This recognition awakens something in the seeker that pardon never could. It awakens their inherent spiritual power, their natural capacity for transformation, their divine ability to work with any material life presents. And this awakening is worth more than 1,000 pardons because it makes them independent of the need for pardoning. They discover they can handle anything because they are not separate from the consciousness that creates everything. If you're feeling this recognition awakening in yourself as you listen, write awakening below. The Holy Master's final teaching is perhaps the most radical of all. He reveals that the entire concept of needing pardon is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of existence. There is no separate self that commits actions requiring forgiveness from another separate self. There is only consciousness experiencing itself through the apparent play of action and consequence. From this perspective, seeking pardon is like the ocean asking the wave for forgiveness, or space requesting absolution from the stars that appear within it. The very question reveals the questioner's ignorance of their true nature. This doesn't mean actions don't have consequences. It means that you are not separate from the consciousness that experiences those consequences. You are the awareness in which all experience appears. When this recognition stabilizes, the need for external pardon simply dissolves, not because you've been forgiven, but because you've recognized there was never anyone separate to forgive. The Holy Master's rejection of pardon ultimately points to this recognition. He refuses to participate in the illusion of separation that makes pardoning seem necessary. And in this refusal, he offers the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to discover your true nature as the awareness that is already whole, already perfect, already free. Follow if you want to explore more teachings that point directly to this recognition and the practical implications of living from this understanding. The seeker who fully receives the Holy Master's teaching undergoes a complete transformation in their relationship with spiritual authority, personal responsibility, and the nature of awakening itself. They stop seeking external validation for their spiritual progress because they recognize that progress itself is a concept that belongs to the illusion of being a separate self moving through time. They stop trying to improve themselves because they discover that what they truly are is already perfect and cannot be improved upon. They stop accumulating spiritual experiences because they realize that what they're seeking is the awareness that makes all experience possible. This transformation appears as loss to those still identified with the seeking self. It looks like the death of spiritual ambition, the end of the growth mindset, the cessation of progress. But to the seeker who undergoes it, it's revealed as the ultimate gain, the discovery of what was never actually lost, the recognition of what was never actually absent. Comment recognition if you can sense this shift from seeking spiritual improvement to recognizing spiritual perfection. The Holy Master watches this transformation with profound satisfaction, not because he's gained another follower, but because he's witnessed another apparent individual discover their true nature. His rejection of their request for pardon was never personal. It was a skillful means designed to exhaust their dependence on external spiritual authority and point them back to their own inherent wisdom. In the end, the seeker realizes that the Holy Master never actually rejected them. He rejected their illusion of being someone who needed pardoning, and in that rejection, he revealed their true nature as the consciousness that is already free, already whole, already home. If this exploration has touched something deep within you, if you feel these layers of spiritual seeking beginning to fall away, comment home below and share what aspect of this teaching resonated most powerfully. And if you want more content that points directly to your true nature beyond all seeking, improving, and becoming, follow now, because we're exploring the most direct teachings available on the nature of consciousness and the recognition of what you already are. The next video will reveal why the most enlightened beings often appear to be the least spiritual people you'll ever meet, and what this teaches us about the difference between authentic awakening and spiritual performance. Until then, notice your own patterns of seeking external spiritual validation. Notice when you want someone else to confirm your progress, absolve your mistakes, or validate your understanding, and experiment with turning that attention back to the awareness that is already present, already knowing, already free from any need for external confirmation. What you're looking for is what's looking. What you're seeking is what's seeking. And what you truly are was never lost and therefore never needs to be found.